I feel like Zimbabwe was being used as an example for South Africa. Because at the end of the day, you can give me a farm, but if I do not have the market that buys my produce at high value, that farm it's useless. Mugabe needed to win an upcoming election, and the war veterans were saying, look, it's time. You guys haven't given us anything. And that was he was not going to win that election without making a move on the land issue.
Yeah. My fellow compatriots, welcome to Break It Down, a platform where we get to unravel some of the most complex social economic issues, making it easy for people to understand. I'm your host, Itumeleng Mpofu, and on this platform, we take the complex and turn it into a conversation. Let's break it down. With today's guest, a brother of mine, Tapuwa Mataruka. You know, I think there's quite a number of people that I'm very fond of, and you are definitely one of those people.
Thank you.
When I came to UCT to do my first year, you were a senior by then, and you had been the head student of Kopano many years before another generation had come and another generation had come, and I came in and I saw you and a few others. And I took those people as like my brothers, you know, people that at all times when I feel like, be it struggling to cope or whatever it is, you know, as a young guy, there's people that you run to and look up to. And you are definitely one of those people for me. And today, for me to have you as a guest on this platform, it's quite an honor, my brother. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So in the stream of conversations that I wanted us to chat about, you were a student that came all the way from Zimbabwe, came to study in South Africa at UCT, where you spent most of your time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you would have encountered social challenges, cultural shock, and all these kind of things that you encountered. I think we should start there.
Okay.
Perhaps you can give me a little bit of a reflection of your time at the University of Cape Town when you're coming all the way from Zimbabwe. Had you been in Cape Town before?
Okay.
Had you been in South Africa before? Is this your first time? And what the experience is like for you?
Okay, so in a nutshell, I'd say I finished my high school 2010. And I'd applied to universities while in my final year of high school.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I didn't get the acceptances that I was looking at on this side. So I was forced into a gap year, which I feel like was probably one of the most valuable years of my life. So in that year, I went to the University of Zimbabwe for a semester. And I also worked as a student teacher.
Okay.
So going to the University of Zimbabwe for me was, so like a month in, that's when I got my acceptance letter to UCT. So I was just like, I'm just here for fun. And like, I didn't even, it was no more academic.
Yeah.
But, you know, I really wish a lot more Black kids would work like a year or so before varsity, because that work experience of being a teacher, when I came to varsity, I had been working with adults that had degrees, they had all these things that, you know, if you go straight from high school to varsity, you have this dream that everything just happens the way you plan it in your head.
Yeah.
And I had that experience of 6 months earning a salary, going to work. You know, obviously most of my colleagues were much older than me. But it just really gave me a very eye-opening experience coming into varsity. So when I got here, it was pretty comfortable because my older sister at the time she actually had finished she had studied here. She had done biochemistry.
Yeah.
She was living here, but she was working for Alan Gray at the time. So I moved in with her at the time. And I wanted rest.
Yeah.
Because And as much as my sister could assist me, I still really felt like I wanted to be in res, because from my experience at the University of Zimbabwe, if you're on campus, you have a more wholesome university experience.
Yeah.
So eventually I got res because, there were vacancies. Maybe some people didn't show up. I eventually got res. I was first put into Leo Marquard.
You were Leo Marquardian
for like 3 days. Then
I think, just for context, we then stayed at Kopano.
Yes.
And Kopano and Leo Marquard are sort of like rivals of UCT. Yeah.
So I was there for like 2-3 days, but because I was sharing a room, me being me, I was like, no, I'll find a way. So I'd go to Kopano every day, trying to find out, is there a room? And eventually there was a room, and I went to student housing saying, guys, I heard there's a room and this is the number. And please, so that's how I ended up in Kopano. I'd never been to
There was no animosity towards you, looking at the fact that you even then ran for leadership.
I feel like no one knew that story.
Okay.
There was animosity.
Yeah.
This was the time of, I don't know if we're going to step to that now.
Yeah.
So when I ran for head student, these were the times of a lot of xenophobic attacks in Joburg.
Okay.
Cape Town at the time, and I would say Western Cape, yes, there are little spurts of it, but it's not as serious as Joburg and, to other places.
Okay.
But when I then moved, when I was then running for a student, they were, and I think this is what makes this country so rich, because there's diverse groups of mindsets that are unapologetic and allowed to express that. And I think that was very eye-opening for me, coming from a very dictatorial country.
Yeah.
Where freedom of speech is not a reality. So it was very frightening, but also very eye-opening. So I did get the comments of why would we make a Zimbabwean head student? But it's part of politics.
No, 100%.
And I think the only reason I eventually even became a head student was because Ernie Kwela, he was running. It was him, me, and Marcus at the time.
Which Marcus?
Marcus Trengrove.
Okay.
So when Ernie pulled out, I then got the black vote, the majority of the black vote. And his reason for pulling out was we were dividing the votes per se. And I honestly feel like when the guys just saw it's a black guy and a white guy, they voted for the black guy.
No, I don't think you should take it like that, because look, man, I came in later.
Yeah.
I became head student, I think 3 generations after you.
Yes.
And you hear stories of the previous people and stuff. And when I hear the level of capability, the level of aura, the level of doing that, particularly you and Leroy, I think also Nicholas that followed.
Yes.
You guys were incredible, so I don't think you should take it like that.
Yes,
but
yes.
Just to come back, part of the reason why I wanted to have you as a guest, right? You coming from Zimbabwe and being based in South Africa, I want us to draw a level of comparison,
okay,
but in understanding the historical context of where Zimbabwe is today.
Okay.
So what I wanted to look at is when you listen to older generation, they talk about Zimbabwe having been this breadbasket of the African continent.
Yes.
So when people think that life is happening in South Africa, no, life actually used to happen in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Life was happening in Zimbabwe. Everything was vibrant. Everything was functional. But then it gets to a point where Zimbabwe is where it is today.
Yes.
People blame different things. Others blame sanctions, that were imposed against Zimbabwe. Others blame particular leadership, in that. With you, of course, threading carefully in a way that you can. how then do you do that analysis of looking back at Zimbabwe and as to where it was and where it is today and how that came about?
Yeah. Look, I think that question has quite a few answers. The first would be, did the sanctions affect Zimbabwe? 100%. I feel like Zimbabwe was being used as an example for South Africa, especially on land reform. That, look, guys, if you guys make this decision, this is what we all do. Because at the end of the day, you can give me a farm, but if I do not have the market that buys my produce at high value, that farm it's useless.
Yeah.
So we just focused on the land. Yes, some land was taken, and it's a myth to say that all white farmers' land in Zimbabwe is taken. That's a myth. There's a lot of white farmers that are still in Zimbabwe. It is white farmers who agreed to the agreement, which was, look, you got 600 hectares. You only effectively use 30. Are you willing to offset the 500 that you don't use? And we're not going to pay for it because you didn't get it by paying for it.
Yeah.
So it's a tense political argument, and I think in Mugabe's defense at the time, this had actually been agreed upon at the Lancaster House agreement. When the time came, Tony Blair said, no, it was a different party that signed to that. We do not know about that. The political noise that then happened now is then Mugabe needed to win an upcoming election. And the war veterans were saying, look, it's time. You guys haven't given us anything. And that was he was not going to win that election without making a move on the land issue.
Yeah.
So he made a move on the land issue, which we did take the land. But it's a lie that all white farmers were. That's a big lie.
Do you think that the lesson was not only to South Africa, but to the entire African continent?
Definitely.
That for any African country that dares to talk progressively about land, we will do unto you what we did to Zimbabwe.
No, definitely. And then let's progress from that, right? Because you asked me the current context of Zimbabwe and why we are where we are now. I would say it's very similar now to the leaders South Africa has. Guys that say they fought for the country, guys that have been in political circles since independence per se, guys that are fully entitled to positions, but their resume of progress does not meet the things they are saying they're entitled to. And, you know, it's so weird for me, and I was saying this to a friend the other day, that every time I read a news article, a South African news article, it feels like I'm reading a newspaper I read 10 years ago in Zimbabwe.
In Zimbabwe. Are you serious?
Yeah, and people say, no, South Africa is too big to fail. Everyone was saying Zimbabwe is too big to fail. Everyone was saying, I am telling you that if these guys have enough power, and when I say these guys, I mean the guys behind the shadows that we don't know about, the guys that fund the political parties, the ruling parties. They're guys we don't know about that have agendas.
Wouldn't that be, I don't want to per se call it white monopoly capital, but wouldn't that be a white system that when it feels threat, it unites, but in its unity, we tend to make a mistake of thinking that white system only exists in South Africa. But in actual fact, the white global system is global.
Yeah.
It exists on every corner of this world. And when there's a place where they feel unwelcomed anymore, what they then do is that they then come together using whatever apparatus they might have, of which in the most cases, that apparatus has to be the United States as a government. Because once the United States as a government is gunning and coming for you, very rare is someone able to escape that. And that US is that epitome of that white system.
Definitely.
That whenever it's threatened, it fights back.
Yeah. And expanding and getting back home to now, why Zimbabwe is where it is, right? We've spoken about back in the day, we've spoken about sanctions, we've spoken about Mugabe. Do you know that, okay, I want to ask you, why wasn't the Zimbabwe border closed in COVID? Why the Zimbabwean issue of illegal foreigners has been going on for almost 15 years now. Why hasn't anything been done there? And the answers I have for you is Black tenderpreneurs have been the biggest beneficiaries of Zimbabwe's instability. Black South African entrepreneurs have been the biggest beneficiaries of Zimbabwe's instability. The border is porous because they make more money from it being porous than closed. 80 to 90% of the stuff you see in Zim shops has been manufactured in South Africa. So let's not even call it white capital, it's power. So it's a market that these guys have, and they gain from the instability of the market. That is why they then don't do anything about the illegal immigrants, because at the end of the day, they're making money.
Yeah.
So I've actually moved away from the white-black thing because, in all honesty, in my own opinion, what the Zimbabwean government has done to its youth and is continuing to do to its youth right now is worse than it's almost as equivalent as colonization. Maybe we're not being beaten up and chased by dogs, but for me, I mean, for you to be a leader who has amassed so much wealth, and still have no issue with an almost 80% youth unemployment rate is concerning.
So it's technically, in a sense, as if there's a war that's being declared against the youth.
Yeah. It's become a tribal thing. So as soon as, it's a tribal or cult or family thing. So as long as my family is fine, the rest will see what they can do. And it's so unfortunate because I honestly think out of most countries in Africa, Zimbabwe is probably one of the easiest countries to fix and make a first world country in less than 5 years. It's got the resources, it's got the human capital, it's not huge. It's probably one of the easiest countries to fix outside the politics.
Yeah. So one thing we've always known about Zimbabwe, anywhere where you are in the African continent, is that on average, a Zimbabwean tends to be very smart. I put it in inverted commas, but very smart in that they're very articulate. Academically, they do much better. When I get to varsity and first year, at some point doing mathematics, and I realized that the Zim guys are actually performing way better than we are. I want to understand that infrastructure that gets them to that point, but also to ask, is that even still the case? Because I've had people who say that that generation of those smart Zimbabweans has long passed. The generation that's there now of young Zimbabweans are not as articulate as the generation used to be, are not as educated as. So it's like things have changed. That thing of expecting a Zimbabwean generally to be smart is not there anymore. Those are the two questions that I have for you.
I mean, definitely. When I first came here, a Zimbabwean was well respected. And for good reasons, I've been robbed once and scammed once.
Welcome
and it was Zimbabwe. Yes. So that work culture, look, you see, it's similar to what the ANC is doing right now. If you erode the culture of hard work. Yet in Zimbabwe, I know, even if you're a DE student, remember going to school is about the culture. So wake up, go to work, whether you become a cleaner or what, that is ingrained in you, right? So, and I don't even know in whatever these guys were doing. First of all, the Zimbabwean government was supposed to, even mid-2000s, be one of the first African countries to really digitize their education. Because remember, everything's evolving.
Yeah.
So you can't keep the system of 1995 in 2025. So those kids are still learning that, but it's a digital world now. So our kids are not going to be competitive, right? Second thing, they closed a lot of technical colleges and they made them universities. Zimbabweans were able to migrate all over the world because we had a very strong artisanal backbone. We had high schools where, yes, you'd do your O-levels, A-levels, but they had a focus on artisans. You'd do woodwork, you do metal work, then we had the educational ones that focused on STEM. They closed the artisanal ones, made them purely academic. Now Zimbabwe is stuck with a bunch of graduates, and maybe we've got 30 universities. I don't know if any other country our size has many universities. And they have degrees, but they can't use them.
Yeah.
First of all, it's not competent. They never, even if they were doing research, we never elevated our educational system. We never changed it. We never made it continue to match global standards. We cut out the artisans, but right now there's such a high demand of artisans around the world.
Yeah.
So Zimbabweans that I knew come here, hard workers, it was easy to get a job because you had a skill. Whereas after these guys eroded everything, down to the educational system, which was what agriculture and the educational system was the pride of Zimbabwe. There's nothing there. I was at the University of Zimbabwe for a semester, and the computers barely worked. The best university in the country. And this was 2010. So right now, maybe there's been funding, maybe, I've never really looked into it. But this is what happens when we continue to follow what politicians say and not what they're doing.
I want us to take that and bring it to the South African context, where right now the US is going through a process where they're going to review the relations with South Africa. We all know they've already made their conclusions about South Africa. And this is particularly in the fact that they do not like the parties or the countries that South Africa has aligned itself with. We're talking about Iran, we're talking about Russia, the whole BRICS countries. They say that the whole mission of de-dollarizing the international system works against the interests of the US. So essentially, South Africa is seen as that enemy or that stumbling block that's standing between the interests of the US. There was this whole false narrative of a white genocide that's taking place. And we know how politics works. They manufactured this propaganda, put it out there, and with good funding, Trump could have succeeded in spreading the narrative that there is actually a white genocide in South Africa. With good funding, with proper marketing, and the entire world could have believed that there is actually a white genocide taking place. And everyone would have sympathized with the South African white community. That's why they could take the white refugees, even though there are people from actually struggling countries that require that refugee status. Now I'm saying let's look at what we were just talking about and bring it into the South African case. What lessons do you think South Africans should be worried about this? And is it of the making of South Africans, or is it just a system that South Africans don't have control of? Because the system does not want you to align with certain political parties. International law only matters when it's certain states, but not the others. Like, should there be lessons that South Africans are looking at and say, I think we can fix here and here?
I'm actually not a pessimist. I'm not someone that looks at things with a negative eye often. But I honestly believe South Africans should be terrified. Especially when you hear what Mkwananzi said. And this has been happening for a long time. He was probably one of the first guys to be brave enough to say, and it's probably a tip of the iceberg. There's many other weird things that have happened, but you don't want to get to a stage like Zimbabwe where you are now being run by a mafia state. It's mafia. Everything is under the couch. Everything's under the bed. This one gets taken out. It's no longer a government. It's mafia. And once that happens, and I think South Africa is already in that, if all this man's claims come out to be true, it's very hard to undo that. And that's why I'm so proud of the president of Botswana right now, because he's setting things in stone, and that is what our leaders should be doing. For me right now, let's say even ZANU-PF goes, the mentality of corruption, the mentality of quick money is now even so deep rooted into the youth and the country. It's going to take a whole generation to realign Zimbabwe, to realign our work ethic, to realign what we were known for. Yes, I know a lot of young people are farming, and in Zimbabwe you can go get a mining claim. I would actually say in Zimbabwe, if you had that idea that I go to school, I get a good job, I get a salary, you're going to struggle. But in Zimbabwe, if you get your piece of land, maybe work for a few years in the diaspora somewhere, saving money, you look for crops that have a good export market, and you create your own market, or you go to the mining claims, you get a gold claim, you start mining on your piece of land. Zimbabwe is beautiful at that. You if you really want to do that, you can. It's not easy, but it's one of those places where you can probably do that easier than here.
Yeah.
But you know, it's unfortunate because we were sold the whole go to school, get a degree, and you have a good job. Then the reality of that is far from reality.
Because, you know, on social media, we do see young Zimbabweans who are like billionaires, you know, your weekly, and all these others that you see online. We hear about you Strive, you know, people that are billionaires. But then when you look at, when they talk about people who are poor in Zimbabwe, the level of being poor, you look at the disparity between those that have and those that do not have. It looks as though there's a very, very massive gap between those.
Yeah. I mean, I like that you gave me two very polar opposite examples. Wicknell for me would be your equivalent to your mom Kiz's. Yeah, like guys that have a lot of money, but you're not too sure. Strive, on the other hand, went to court in and out for 10 years to get his first telecom license to operate his Econet.
10 years?
10 years. You know, telecom is power. It's you know, so it's, you know, there was security, there was information threats, you know, so the government was trying to kind of block it or arm string him into him being under them. But finally he won, and apparently Joshua Nkomo, the late, may his soul rest in peace, who was referred to as Father Zimbabwe, was one of the guys that was just like, guys, I don't understand why you guys are blocking this guy. I don't get it. But if you think from a political eye, I understand why they would block it, because, you know, they want to be part of the pie. You know, it's how these guys have always...
So you have to grease the hands, same way you want to do business.
Yes. So he eventually got that. And I think it's hard for a guy like Strive to help him, because, you know, one thing I've always asked myself, guys like Wicknell, they can give people cars, they can throw money, but they can't even build a hospital. It's like that money is like voodoo money. Like, so even though these guys have money, whoever's giving them the money also has some sort of control on how they spend that money. And I honestly think Strive would love to do a lot more in Zim, but I think he doesn't have energy for that. It's like, I don't know if you know this boxing guy, the Zim boxing. He does, what's this? MMA from Zim. Something Gorimbo. He's pretty popular worldwide.
Yeah.
He had started, he went to his rural area. He was building like a facility, like a library, but there's computers and all of this. He wanted to help his community. Then he says these guys just kept coming to him.
The politicians.
Yeah.
So it's essentially what's happening in South Africa now with this whole, I'm forgetting
extortion.
Extortion.
Yes.
The tax that you need to pay.
Yes.
Because now it has entered even in the townships. If you're running a business, there's an extortionist who wants money from you.
So he said he just got frustrated. I mean, he needs to focus on his career, and he sent people to just demolish the thing.
Yeah, because, you know, the sad part about Zim is that you grow up, of course, hearing all these stories about people who come from Zim, how incredible they are, how intelligent they are. And you see all of them leaving the country. Because I can imagine that if you have a qualification and you have the capability of becoming a medical doctor anywhere else in the world, as long as you just get there, you do whatever program that make you meet the demands of that country, you can easily work. You have no reason to be going back. A lot of Zimbabweans are in South Africa. Others are in the UK.
Yes.
I hear that there's quite a big...
I mean, apparently Wall Street, some really big Wall Street guys are some guys.
Yeah, I'm hearing even Australia and New Zealand are now the new place. Dubai also included, where all the Zimbabwe... Because, I mean, that brings about the whole issue of brain drain, you know. All the educated, skillful people in the country who could be at the forefront of solving the issues have exited. I think at one point, South Africa was literally at that, where people were talking about the possibility of actually leaving and going to work abroad. It's actually happening, actually. Yeah. If you look at a lot of people that are teaching English in South Korea, in China, these are South Africans. You look at people who are in Dubai, working in Dubai, some of them are South Africans. So I think with that brain drain that's happening, it then also brings about an element of criminality. You say that you were robbed in SA by Zim guys. Did you say, hey, Mdara?
No, I was just like, dude, I trust these guys. You know, I was just like, you always go with, human nature is you always go with what's familiar.
Yes.
Right? So,
so you're robbed by a Zim guy in SA, you are Zim, and when you talk to them, what happens? They don't...
So this is what happened. I was in Cape Town.
Yeah.
But there's a project I was working on in Stellenbosch. And this was around COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm like to one of my friends, look, because she was actually going home for a few months. She says to me, look, if you're looking for a place, you can actually stay at my place. Then you just give me the rent for the month or whatever.
Yeah.
She was supposed to come back on the Saturday, I think.
Yeah.
Then she said to me on the Wednesday, look, I'm coming back earlier. Is it going to be an inconvenience for you to leave before I come back? And as someone that has, accommodated me and, has helped me, I also don't want to be inconvenienced. Then I'm like, look, don't worry. It's just a day before. What I'll do is I'll get the guys, some guys I trust, because they had moved. I kind of knew them through someone. They had moved someone. I'm like, okay, I'll get the guys to just move my stuff. They'll keep it. Then I'll go get it from them, or I'll meet them. I get back because I had stuff like my laptop and stuff. So I came back on the Friday just thinking, okay, my bags and my stuff has been moved. They've taken my bags, taken my laptop, taken everything I said they shouldn't take that is mine. And on top of that, they've attached some appliances that belong to this girl.
Oh, flip.
I am confused.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So, the phone doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
All of that, the due diligence I would have done if I hadn't just said, some guys, man.
Yeah. Oh, I thought the experience you had was, like being mugged somewhere on the corner and a guy rocks up.
Yeah, that was the other experience.
Oh, flat.
I'm just walking down from the train station and these guys are speaking Shona. They ask me for time. Then they take my phone. So for me now, I don't look at someone and be like, oh, you're Zimbabwean, okay, pure. Nah. People are people.
So let's go back as we're heading towards our conclusion. I want to understand back to your time as a student in South Africa at UCT. A lot of movements start to emerge. Fees Must Fall starts to emerge. Roads Must Fall starts to emerge, and all sorts of other movements and protests. You are a Zimbabwean student. How then do you resonate with those movements and the extent in which you feel like you can participate and such a movement? Because do you feel that the movement excludes you? Do you feel like the movement also speaks to you? You know, with you being based in South Africa.
Yeah. You know, I got involved in Rosemar School, and I 100% don't regret being involved. And the reason I was involved didn't make sense to a lot of other foreign students, because in their mind, this was a South African student issue.
Yeah.
Why are you concerned? But at the time, as you know, I was still partly in student leadership. I had been the deputy co-chair of the Res Council. At one point, I was a head student in Kopano. And over those experiences, it was very clear to me that the system was very much pinned against a certain demographic of students who were mainly Black.
Yeah.
I remember the first thing that was eye-opening for me was, you would know this, we would have a budget as a house committee.
Of course.
That every student's fees would contribute to for events and so forth. So the end of my term is coming up. And we actually spent really well. So we had quite a lot of money left over. I think at the time that's the most any Housecom had ever left behind. But we did everything. It's not like we weren't doing events and so forth. And I take it up with my warden. My warden's like, you're not going to win this one. I take it up with student housing that, look, there's 15 students that you guys are saying can't register. And their amounts are like 4K, 5K, 9, small money. We can take it to a vote as a house. I'm not saying let's talk to the house and see if they're willing to. This is money we haven't used and we're not going to use.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing I noticed, that, okay, this money is sitting here. They contributed, but you want to exclude them financially for like 5K that we know is, so maybe that money goes somewhere else. Let's not get into that. But the reason I got involved was mainly on the housing issue, because that's where I had some sort of understanding, and I knew how to tackle the system when it comes to that. I stayed in Res for a year after being excluded without paying for accommodation. And it was not even they never approached like an occupation.
Yeah.
I think with me, the university tried to tread a bit more carefully, maybe because I was a foreign student. But I don't know. I actually don't understand, because, and I think this is the first time I've shared this on a public platform. On the day I decided, okay, I'm going home now. And I think this is part of, we see things like from what they show us.
Yeah.
But there's always something going on behind the scenes. So the day I decided, okay, I'm going home, I get to the airport, Cape Town International. I'm told, nope, you have to travel tomorrow. Okay. I go tomorrow. Coincidentally, I'm sitting at the back of the plane with a politics professor from UCT. I really don't feel like talking. I mean, I'm going home to tell my parents that, look, I don't want to finish and I'm done.
Yeah.
You can't tell me to go back. I am done. Because the Rosemar full time was very, I know people that still haven't recovered mentally.
This conversation is becoming so repetitive. Everyone is saying that people have not recovered.
Yeah, I know people that, are probably, they are, and it's 10 plus years since. I get into the plane. This guy, when someone pokes you into a conversation, we chat. By the end of this flight, this guy is offering me that he can help me move from the computer science degree I was studying to a political science degree. I'm like, dude, who's going to pay for it? Or he's like, don't worry, I find that very weird. But then I ignored all of it. I got home. Then when I got home, the agreement with my parents was, okay, you need to transfer your credits. We're not going to let you not finish.
Yeah. I
transfer my credits to AFTA. AFTA says, okay, you'll finish in 1 year and about half a semester to get your credits to finish if I transfer my credits.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, no, that's fine. I get my student permit. Everything is fine. The day I'm leaving, I get to the airport, and at the airport they say, no, your passport is flagged. You can't leave.
The what?
My passport is flagged. I can't leave.
Your passport is flagged?
I can't leave.
What happened?
Okay. The next day, my dad and I went to the South African embassy. And they took us to the boardroom. Then some lady who's a senior there, she just says to me, I can't explain why, but yeah, I can't tell you the details, but...
Your passport is flagged?
Yeah.
Is it by the South African side or by the Zim side?
I definitely think there was a lot of intelligence work going on during Rhodes Must Fall.
Okay. So this is some form of retaliation, but based on...
I think what they feared was a regrouping.
Yeah.
Because Rhodes Must Fall is maybe an equivalent in modern age Black Panthers. It really did shake.
That is interesting to hear.
So, if that happened to me, and I'm still unsure about it, but if that happened to me, I can only imagine all the other guys that were arrested, all the guys, because there was a lot of political dirty stuff going on.
So how then were you able to, I'm trying to understand what happens then after that? You go back home and stay? When do you come back?
Okay, so as soon as after they said that, I was like, okay, it's fine. Because for me, I had already made a decision that education was not going to empower me the way I want to be empowered.
Yeah.
So for me, even going to finish off and transfer my credits was more for my parents than for me. So obviously I had to be at home. Then I've always been entrepreneurial. So, at the time I started a small business. I applied for, grant funding from United Bank of Africa. They had this thing where they fund 1,000 entrepreneurs across Africa every year. I qualified, I got the funding. And to be honest, from there, my focus had now just been on trying to build something.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been trying to do since. It hasn't been easy. I would say everything was 100% about to align, then just COVID happened. But yeah. So
the next time you then come into SA after that, the blockage was removed.
Yeah. So I appealed it, but remember, it was a delay. It was just a manufactured. So now even my student permit won't be valid because my spot has been taken.
Oh man.
So
Yeah.
it's just, it was a knock on that.
No, man, I'm so sorry to hear about this, because I had chats with quite a lot of activists, and they all talk about the dirtiness that the state had to play. But as we move towards closing, my brother, I'm interested to know, which is something that I've been asking guests, if, I think for you would put it in the context of Zimbabwe. I've always asked them that if there were things or something that you would pick and feel that it needs change in the country, what would it be? But for you, I think it would be for Zim. When you look at Zim and look at the potential growth trajectory that Zim has, and ways in which systems could be put into place, what kind of area or things you'd be looking at?
Can I answer it from both ends?
Yes.
Do you know what I feared the most, and which I now start to think is probably human nature, is I saw student activists be as corrupt as the leaders we were fighting. I'm not too sure why no one is talking about it, but what happens to the millions of dollars that were raised with the GoFundMe during Rhodes Must Fall? Where's that money?
That's a good question.
There's nothing has been said. Oh no, that it was taken by the state. Nothing.
So there were millions that were raised.
Yes, there's a time. I think when that GoFundMe was first opened, do you know Rhodes Must Fall hit the world? It ignited protests in America, and I think there's a time it was making like 500,000 a week from donations, 500,000 rands.
And the money was disappearing among the student leaders themselves.
Oh, well, no one knows. And yeah, so that for me is just a fear I have that, we are all inherently corrupt. And if we are presented with power, do you think we'll be as noble as we are sitting here saying we won't do it?
Yeah.
But coming back to your question, what should change? What would I change in Zim? Zim is complicated because Zim is actually run by the military. They're the ones that make the ultimate decisions. And I've always thought if our leaders made sure the basics are there, good healthcare, good roads, factories are running, they would have more money to steal. I'm at a point where I'm not even saying don't steal. No, guys, steal.
You can steal, but
have fun. But you can actually steal more if your country is fixed. So just the basics. I think that change can only come from the top down. There's no protest that will help. There's no, even the likes of Chamisa, who is the opposition, who I'd say maybe equivalent of Malema, is captured. He's now just a pawn to just show some sort of opposition that does not exist.
Yeah, my brother. I hope that at some point we are able to continue this conversation.
Definitely.
And I hope that we are able to touch on other issues. But next time around, I would want us to look more in SA, and not necessarily draw the comparison. But I think your experience and your knowledge of understanding the circumstances and history was very important to come to the platform so that, people can share. And I'm hoping a lot more others who also have stories that they wish to share can also be able to approach me and bring forth their stories so that, we can learn and try to understand what can we draw as comparisons between the two countries in SA. So thank you so much for coming to the platform.
Thank you so much.
And I really appreciate you taking your time to be here. My fellow compatriots, it's a wrap. If it's big, if it's bold, if it's hidden underneath the headlines, on this platform, we take it, we dissect it, we strip it apart, we break it down. If we haven't done so, follow us on our social media accounts where we continue this conversation. The accounts are linked down in the description. Also, make sure to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the notifications bell so that whenever there's new videos, you can be able to be notified and you stay tuned to the platform. For joining the Break It Down platform, thank you so much. And my name is Itumeleng Mpofu. Done. Thank you, Wendy.
Get done. You too.
Siambo, my brother.